All right. So thank you everybody so much for joining us today at this second meeting of the DuPage Higher Education Service Council. We are really excited to have everyone here, and let's just get right to it. So quick introduction. My name is Elizabeth Okrasik. For those of you who do not know me, I am the moderator for the meeting today. My title is AmeriCorps member. I am serving with the Campus Compact VISTA program at Giving DuPage, and this council is what I do. It is why I am here serving with AmeriCorps. If everybody could take just a moment to change your Zoom name to your first, last, and the institution or organization that you are representing today, we would really appreciate it. And then also, I wish we had time for everybody to introduce themselves. You are all doing wonderful things at different organizations and institutions, but we just don't have that kind of time. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let everybody know who you are, what organization you come from, what you do, or why you're excited to be here today. We would love to hear from you all. And while you're doing that, a few housekeeping things. We do encourage cameras to be on, but we completely understand if that is not within your capacity today. Also, please be mindful of the mute. We're trying to limit the background noise in our recording as much as possible. So if you are not actively speaking out, asking a question, or presenting, just try to remember to check on that. Use the chat for questions at any time throughout this meeting. We want to make sure that you're all understanding everything that's going on, and we have a lot to share. So feel free to throw any questions in the chat, and we will be addressing those throughout. And yes, the answer to the question everyone has, the recording and slides will be shared, and we'll also have other materials and notes that we will be sharing as well. And I'm going to pass it to Shefali. Oh, you're on mute, Shefali.
I thought I hit the button. I didn't forget this time. I thought I hit the button, but I didn't press hard enough. Good morning, everyone. It's Shefali. Nice to see everyone. Thanks for taking time to join us. I'm trying to just do a quick, sorry, Elizabeth, I think we went out of the screen, the slide view. There we go. So usually I save our Giving DuPage announcement for the end, but I've learned that usually at the end, people drop off very quickly. So I just want to do a quick reminder about what our upcoming event, which is called Giving DuPage Days. It's a multi-charity virtual fundraiser with a goal to raise over $300,000 for 100 plus charities. I know that there are higher ed institutions as well as nonprofits joining us today, but for the nonprofit organizations, or if your higher ed has a foundation, and you're interested in joining us for this fundraiser, we'd love to have you. The whole goal of this event is to try to raise funds for our DuPage-based organizations. That is our main intention and agenda. If you are interested in learning more about the event, the link to the trainings here has the recording that has complete details for the actual event and what's involved. And the last day to register if you want to be a participating charity is February 19th. But it is an opportunity to raise unrestricted funds with no upper limit for your mission. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Elizabeth and let her get started with the meat of the matter today, which is the Higher Education Service Council. Thank you.
Thanks, Shefali. All right. So our objectives and agenda for today. Following our welcome, we are going to have a DuPage poverty presentation by our partners at the DuPage Federation, followed by talking about some partnership projects within the council. We'll then go on to sharing resources, then talk about communication and connections, followed by roles and responsibilities in the council, close up with some next steps, and then we'll have time for questions and discussions at the end. And before I get started, I want to take a group photo. Last time we took it at the end, as Shefali said, and people were leaving us. So I would love to do that now. There are fantastic memories from our first meetings. So let me figure out, here we go. Nope. Technology, here we go. All right, it's gonna take too much time to tell everybody what page you're on, so I'm gonna count to 3 a bunch of different times and everybody just smile. All right. 1, 2, 3. Oh, the chat came up. Hold on. Blocking someone's face.
Perfect.
All right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right. Next one. 1, 2, 3. All right. And last picture. 1, 2, 3.
That was great. Good job.
You
That'll
all
be
look
posted on social.
All right. Thank you all for indulging me there. That is something I really like about our previous meetings, is that we have these little memorabilia. All right. And lastly, before we kind of jump into things, we want to thank you all so much for being a part of this. We have just been overwhelmed and overjoyed by everyone's enthusiasm and participation thus far. And so whether you have been with us before or you're joining us for the first time, thank you so much. So you may be asking, what is this council? The DuPage Higher Education Service Council is a student-led countywide collaboration to address the needs of the DuPage community through service. So that's kind of our little one line of what this group is all about. We'll get into a little bit more in a second, but we do want to share that this is a program of Giving DuPage that is currently in partnership with Campus Compact and AmeriCorps Vista. And with the partnership with AmeriCorps Vista, this council will be focusing efforts initially on working with organizations and supporting low-income households, as Vista's purpose is fighting poverty. And so we came up with 4 distinct purposes of why we see this council as a need. And one is to address local nonprofit community needs. We definitely understand the importance of addressing the needs that are identified in our community to make the greatest impact. Next is connecting the nonprofit community and higher education institutions to foster direct collaboration and partnership. And so we do hope to really bridge those two sides, bringing together the nonprofit communities and higher education to make bigger impacts. The third point is creating higher education network to pool resources, knowledge, and engagement efforts across institutions. And so what we're really trying to do with this council as well is bringing together higher education in DuPage County to take all of those resources, that knowledge, those skills, to make bigger impacts and more substantive change in the community. And last but not least, cultivate strong, empathetic student leaders dedicated to social change. And so in our little one-liner, we say it's a student-led group, and that really is the intention of what we want to do with this council, is have students be at the forefront, leading the social change that we accomplish within this council. All right. And I am now going to pass it off to Jordan Durrett with the DuPage Federation with our poverty picture presentation.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Durrett, and I am a data analyst with the DuPage Federation on Human Services Reform. Our executive director, Dave Roth, is on the call with us. So good morning, boss. You can move on to the next slide. Okay, so today what I'm going to be talking about is just a very brief, very basic overview of the cost of living in DuPage and how that interacts with low income and folks who are in poverty in DuPage. I'm going to talk about some of those numbers and some of the changes we've been seeing. Okay, move on. Thank you. So the first thing I want to talk about is the definition of poverty, because when we say poverty, in the nonprofit world, in the government world, in the higher education world, we might all be talking about something different. So in my world, in the policy world, poverty is defined by the government, and they use food prices to calculate this thing called the federal poverty line. And this idea came up in the 1960s when food was one of the costliest items for a household. Now this FPL is used to determine poverty status for the government. So if you see government numbers saying like this many people are in poverty, this is what they're talking about. And the FPL is also used to determine what kind of government aid people are eligible. So that's things like SNAP, that's things like public health insurance, that's programs that help folks get their basic necessities met. Okay. Okay, so one of the first things I want to talk about is DuPage has seen an increase in poverty over the last few years. Honestly, over about the last 30 years, we've been seeing this increase, but I wanted to highlight the 20-year difference from 1999 to 2019. We have seen an increase in poverty of 66.2%. And one thing I want to note is that the federal poverty line is based on how many people are in the house. So if you have a 4-person household, the poverty line is $26,200 annual income. So anybody who is at or under that is considered in poverty. And as you can see, people who are in poverty have gone from 3.6% to 5.9% in DuPage. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay. Now, I know we just talked about that definition of poverty, but now I want to talk about a few issues with that definition. So as I mentioned, it's based on food. And while in the 1960s, food was one of the most expensive things, nowadays it is not. Nowadays, you have things like housing, transportation, childcare, and medical expenses that are all much more costly than food. So we want to kind of think about, okay, is there a different definition of poverty to really let us know if people are meeting their basic needs? Move on to the next. So that's where the cost of living metric comes in, because it provides this much more realistic income limit for living, not just comfortably, but living in a financially secure way. And one of the good things about the cost of living metrics is it's based on local expenses. It's not just nationwide. So you really get a good snapshot of what's happening in the community. And if a household's income falls below the cost of living minimum wage, then we know that they are likely to still be struggling, even if they're above the federal poverty line. If they're still under the cost of living minimum wage, they're still going to have a difficult time making ends meet. Can move on. And so here's a breakout. I use the MIT cost of living metrics. As we can see in DuPage, for a 4-person household with 2 adults who are both working, you need an annual income of about $61,000 just to break even in this county. So even if you have a decent job, you may not be breaking even in this county. We can move on.
Sorry, can I clarify something?
Sure.
Is this like a 2-person household, or is this
Sure,
just
if we,
clarify?
oh yeah, no problem. So this is a 4-person household with 2 adults who are working, so that means 2 children. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, we can move on. All right, so that's why in my opinion, looking at people who are in poverty in DuPage is not enough. You also need to look at upwards of double the poverty line. So that's looking at, for folks who are in a 4-person household, $52,400. And that's still even below the cost of living, but this gets us closer to really looking at how many folks in DuPage need help. And as you can see, the percentages and the numbers are much higher than folks who are at or below the poverty line. So we're talking about in 2019, that's about 137,500 folks who potentially could need help meeting basic needs in DuPage County. And as we've seen, this has also been on the increase. It's increased by 44.1% from 1999 to 2019. and it's gone from 10% of the population to about 15% of the population. So we're just seeing this trend of increase. And we can move on to the next. So why might we be seeing this increase, right? That's really what a lot of people are interested in. So we don't know exactly for sure. I just want to lay that out right now. But I do want to take some time to debunk a narrative that I've heard a lot in the county. And this narrative is that poverty is increasing because people are moving out of the city and into the suburbs. The data is showing that this is not the case. First of all, the cost of housing in DuPage is really high, so it's very unlikely that people who are struggling financially in the city are moving out to DuPage. Also, the migration stats for people who are leaving Chicago show that most people leaving Chicago are leaving the metropolitan area entirely. They're moving to places in the Sun Belt like Atlanta and Houston and LA and places like that. But there is data, and this is interesting, there is data to support this idea of becoming poor in place. Because in the DuPage over the last 30 years, higher paying jobs have slowly diminished. They've all been moving into the city. And when this vacuum occurs with high paying jobs, low income paying jobs come in. Also the high housing costs. We have one of the highest housing costs, I want to say, in the metropolitan area, and that includes in Chicago. And then we have difficulties with public transportation systems. So if all of the high paying jobs have moved into the city, that means that our people who live in DuPage really need to have reliable transportation to get to the higher paying jobs. And what we've seen in all of the counties is our public transportation systems are not adequate for that. And I just want to pull out this quote by this really amazing guy, Professor Scott Allard. He writes a lot about poverty in suburban areas. And as he says, people have become poor in place because of changes in the labor market, changes in economic opportunity, and minimum wages that have not kept up with the cost of living. So that's really what's causing this increase in poverty. Okay. And just another thing to note about DuPage poverty and suburban poverty in general, that's a little bit different from urban types of poverty, is that it's kind of scattershot. As you can see in this map, the darker blue areas are the places where there are more people who are living in poverty. It's kind of spread out over the whole of DuPage. Which means that resources must be available throughout the county. We can't just put resources in a neighborhood and know that that's going to reach a lot of people in poverty. And I want to say that this map doesn't even take those who are low income into account, who are low income but above the poverty line into account. So we know that this issue is similar throughout DuPage County. But that does give us an opportunity, because that means that there's a lot of opportunities throughout DuPage County to help. Okay. And then I just wanted to mention, we're not sure exactly yet how coronavirus is going to impact poverty in the long term, but we do know right now it is impacting a lot of people, not just medically, but economically. We've seen that since March, there have been 2.9 million unemployment claims in Illinois alone, which is we fear a financial collapse, kind of similar to 2008. We've seen that food insecurity has increased by 46% between 2018 and 2020. A lot of that is suggested to be because of coronavirus. And then we're also seeing pending evictions. So 1 in 5 renting adults in the US were not caught up with their rent payments in January 2020. And some of these things, they could improve rapidly after coronavirus, but we don't know if they will. So this is something we have to keep an eye on, and it's something that really is urgent. And so I'm glad that we're bringing this council together, because there's a lot that we can do to maybe address these things. Okay. I just put in some sources. You guys will get the slide deck. There's a lot of great information in these sources. If you're curious, I definitely suggest checking them out. And then I think, yeah, just questions.
I have one quick question. You mentioned the food cost has come down compared to some other expenses, which seems to be a welcome change. Can you tell us why that has happened, or is it a national trend or only here in DuPage?
Oh, great question. That is a national trend. As food became less costly to produce with new farming practices and things like that, the cost of the food came down dramatically from the 1960s to today to present. That's a really great question. Thank you.
Elizabeth, can you go back to the map slide from a few ago? Laura, feel free to unmute yourself. She had a question on the maps and wanted a little bit more clarification. So I'm guessing, Laura, you might have a very specific question around it.
Actually, no, I was just trying to interpret this map and I see lots of numbers, but those don't align with zip codes. So I'm just trying to understand what exactly the breakdown represents and what the numbers mean.
Sure. So the numbers, they're, I believe, geopoints, but the breakdown of it is, you are correct, those are not zip codes, those are census tracts. So they're a little smaller than the zip codes. Great question.
So just drilling down on this, Jordan, if there were like towns or areas that you could specify, I mean, it looks like, so are there communities that we could, like, you could point to and say, I mean, I know these represent census tracts, but.
Yeah, sure. So if you see that far left, kind of up in the corner, those dark blue, it says 8413 on it, 0.12. Yeah, thank you. That's the West Chicago area. We know that there is a big pocket of poverty there. And I know that down in the very corner, I think that is Downers Grove area. That's in the Lyle Township. And up in the upper right corner, you're getting next to O'Hare and some of those areas next to O'Hare.
Thank you, that helps.
Yeah, no problem. And I do have maps that show town names and stuff. If anybody's interested in, I can dig that up and send those to Elizabeth and she can send them out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you all for such great questions. Does anybody have any more? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jordan, and this really interesting presentation with a lot of important information that I think, you know, we should all know about for our own community.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I just want to say I'm really excited about this council. I think there's a lot of good we can do together.
Thanks, Jordan. You will all get the slides, as Jordan mentioned, and also her email if you have any further questions related to the presentation. All right. So we've talked about this idea of poverty and how that's what this council is going to kind of focus on as we start supporting low-income households. And the DuPage Federation has shared that they did a partnership with Benedictine University to really address some low-income household needs. So I'm going to invite David Roth to briefly share about that partnership.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
We're incredibly grateful to our partners at Benedictine University. Benedictine has a program in public health, and last fall, Krishna Bhagat approached nonprofits, human service organizations in the county and said, have you got things that our students could be working on that would advance public health? And we latched on the idea of promoting vaccine confidence. So Krishna recruited a group of 5 master's level public health students. They each researched 1 or 2 specific identities, racial, ethnic, language, that are prevalent in our community and in surrounding areas, and did research about what do we know about vaccine confidence and hesitancy among those groups, And what is it that human services can be doing to build confidence over the long haul? How do we partner with public health to do that? They put together a 90-minute workshop presentation that was presented in December. It's been recorded and the PowerPoint is available as well. The students were incredibly well prepared for this, capable. They themselves brought an incredible amount of diversity, representation, and inclusion to the project. And we had a very good attendance on the event, and we got better and stronger in knowing what to do to build vaccine confidence for COVID-19 as a result. Shout out, kudos to Benedictine University for that.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Again, it's just, you know, a nice example of how nonprofit organizations in higher education in DuPage County can come together to make real change. And now we'd like to take a moment to shout out to some of our own projects within the council that we know of. There are 4 that I have been told about. There may be more hiding out there that are happening that we don't necessarily know, but I want to just tell you all about these 4 different projects. The first one was sharing a free flu vaccine flyer, a lot of F's there, in 11 different languages. So the DuPage Health Coalition and College of DuPage were able to connect through the council and share this information with their student body. The second one is an Acts of Joy, Joy for Teachers MLK Service Day event. So College of DuPage and National Louis University partnered together and were able to offer various different service projects for their students in a safe way, of course, for MLK Day. And then they got together virtually to discuss and reflect on those opportunities and experiences. A future project that I've heard about, but is still in the works, is combating isolation in older adults between National Louis University and DuPage Senior Citizens Council. And then Jordan Durrett presented at our previous meetings, and we found out that she will be partnering with College of DuPage on a virtual community engagement presentation based on some of the information that she shared with us last time. So we're really excited about all of these projects that are happening and wanted to shout out and make everybody aware that things are happening. And so with that, we want to kind of talk about the big picture. And so some of these projects, the ones that I have shared, are easy connections, things that happened right away. And we are so glad that that happened. But we also want to keep our eye on the horizon and think about the big picture of this council and why we really thought that it needs to be something that DuPage has as a resource and an asset to supporting community. And so this long-term vision is really to collectively address community needs through service. We want to bring together all of the resources of higher education, create common goals so that we can take these needs in the community and find ways to work together and make a substantial change. And so we came up with a few ideas to kind of dip our toes in the water and start thinking about that future big picture collective vision. And I have a few different here for you to talk about. One thing is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is a very prominent topic right now. So we thought this could be something collaboratively that higher education and nonprofit organizations work together to share resources and knowledge to allow our community to better understand how to support diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in higher education and the nonprofits, but for our wider population as well. Another idea was about food security. So we know a couple higher education institutions already have community gardens, which is wonderful. But there's a lot of different ways that as a community, countywide, we can get together and create gardens that will support and provide fresh food to pantries. This is a perishable item that is hard to come by and doesn't last long term. So it's really important that pantries get this. but with, different research and science behind supporting these gardens. And of course, the many wonderful people in higher education to help support these. That is one idea countywide that we thought of. And last but not least, another idea was supporting the financial needs. And so Jordan shared in her presentation that DuPage County not only struggles below the poverty line, but above the poverty line as well. And so there's potentially opportunities for higher education in DuPage County to work on research projects to better understand those needs and supports in the community so that we can pool our resources and find the best way to support low-income households. I'm going to pause and just make sure there's no questions before I move on.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned this and I missed it. For doing gardens and stuff, how would you figure out location based on the?
Yeah, that would just be something that the schools and the nonprofits work to talk to community about and find different locations. It's very much talking to community leaders and figuring out where land is allocated and what's available.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question. So council projects tracking and sharing. I shared 4 projects that we know about from just a few meetings that we've already had in the council. But we want to know everything that comes out of this council. We want to know all the hard work and efforts that you are all doing. So we created a form that is attached here, and you will get all the information and follow-up. But it's a form that will help you hopefully easily communicate your partnership projects with us. It talks a little bit about helping describe your project, all the partners, as well as thinking about outcomes or sharing outcomes so that we understand what is happening within the council. And so why share? We want to document council efforts. It's really important to us to understand what is happening within the council so that we know the impact that is happening in all these different projects. And if we know the impact of individual progress or projects, we can understand collective impact a lot better. And so uniting all these different groups towards service, we can get a big picture of what kind of change we are making. And then share, because we share projects on the webpage, which I will get into. We have put together our webpage since the last meeting, and I'm actually gonna walk everybody through some things right now, but bookmark it. Ooh. But go ahead and you'll get this link, bookmark the page, because this will have some resources for you. All right, can everybody see that it's loading? Okay. Awesome, so here's our web page. You can find it at the Giving DuPage website under What We Do and Higher Ed Service Council. And so I'm just going to scroll down. There's a little bit of introductory information, section about who our council higher education partners are. And here's the important stuff. So we have 3 big buttons here, and I'm going to walk everybody through each one. So we're going to start with higher ed nonprofit partnership projects. And like I said, sharing projects on the webpage, this is where we do it. We are sharing all the information that we know about the projects that are happening right now. Title, when it happened. We even have some resources here that you can browse and see. This is the MLK Day flyer from the COD and National Louis University event. And so feel free to browse this chart and kind of see what's happening in the council. Next is the higher ed community resources button. And so when you click that, it's going to lead you to a Google folder. And you click on the resource, and this is what we have come up with so far. I am going to get into explaining a little bit more about this, but I wanted you all to make aware that this is where it is. When you want to look for different higher education resources, we have a document here that
Elizabeth, can you just zoom in a little bit on this so that people can see it bigger?
Yeah, let's see. How's that? All right.
Good.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly talk a little bit about this, that we've organized resources by category. So you can see different resource categories on the side. It tells you what institution it can be found at, as well as a linked box of the resource here. And then a brief description about what it is. This is very basic information from what I could do in some Google searching on everyone's website. So it is by no means a complete list, but it is something to get us all started on building those connections and understanding the resources of higher education. And the last button on the side here is student recruitment resources. And when we click it, it brings us to, oh, now I'm very zoomed in. It brings us to 2 different student recruitment resources that we currently have. The intention of these resources is to help higher education recruit students to be part of the council. It has our webpage linked, as well as contact information that is linked so that people can get in touch with us. We are so excited to have students really start participating. And so we hope these are useful tools for you all to get people engaged. Nonprofits, feel free to use these as well if you think you can attract some students for the council. We have a flyer, and this one is an email form that you can copy and paste information and share that with students as well. All right. Any questions on those 3 before I go on?
Yeah, I think definitely we want to hear questions because we've now shared a lot of different resources, so please chime in with those.
I have a quick question. I hope that, does the council have any advocacy initiative work? I work in the far east of DuPage County in Bensonville. There was, which, as you know, when the airport got expanded, there was a school that was removed from there, and there is a very large plot of land that has become vacant. That would have been an ideal place for a community garden. I do not know how to go about. Would the council maybe take the initiative to see if that could be turned into a community garden that people get plots to cultivate, or whatever? I don't know whether it is belongs to the village or to Park District. I just do not know. Anyway, is the councils might take up something like that?
So I'm going to kind of chime in because I'm sure Elizabeth maybe may not. So George, that's a great question. And like, that's a kind of, those are the kinds of ideas that we want to sort of punt or understand or sort of appreciate. We may not say, there may not be a one-to-one like match that this is a great project for higher ed to get involved with, and that's possible. So what you would do as a starting point is to just sort of propose the idea, and there'll be a way for you to, we'll have a way for you to sort of say, here's an idea, nothing to do with our organization. And then we as Giving DuPage, because we have those relationships, we'll have the Higher Ed Service Council as well as the nonprofit organizations. We would try to loop in the higher ed and also maybe the food pantries that are up in your area. Like there's a Rosedale food pantry, there's a Wooddale food pantry, and we would want to foster a connection there. So our role would be to say, hey, there's this idea that was proposed. Can you all sort of take this on and see if this is a worthy idea to explore further? So we would try to foster that collaboration and connection. But you're on the right track that if this is an idea that's worth exploring, you can propose it, push it in, and even if it has nothing to do with your nonprofit's exact mission, but if you think it would help, especially with the poverty picture, then we want to see if we can encourage a project to happen together. So that's kind of how we would approach it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
There are, oh, look, look at that. Katie Thomas is from the Bensonville Wooddale Food Pantry. She heard what you said. And then there's some more questions coming in. So we'll definitely keep sharing those, but go ahead, Elizabeth.
All right. So there are 2 more buttons that are important on this web page for everybody. higher ed directory members only, and past meeting materials. I need to make note that the higher ed directory is for higher education members only. This is for them to get in contact with each other. But we do have contacts that we will be sharing with nonprofits in the future. This is specifically for those members. And then past meeting materials, when you click on that button here, we have the past meeting materials. So the higher education introduction meeting and the nonprofit introduction meeting. And after today, I will also be putting in today's meeting materials as well. If you click on the folders, it will bring you to all the different resources, the recording, the notes we took, the slides, and also the infographic shared by the Federation at the last meeting. The very same information for the other meeting is also in the other folder. I would like to share that this is a password locked page. So higher education gets the password. And if you are part of the group and, excuse me, if you're part of the higher education group and want to be added to the list, feel free to reach out and let me know. This is linked here if anybody needs to contact me directly and reach out if you forget my email, or you can scroll down to the bottom of the page and there is a contact us section, which I will also get. Feel free if you have a question or if there's a student interested in joining, feel free to let them use this opportunity to connect with us on our end. All right, that's what I have to share on the webpage. Does anyone have questions? Great.
Quick question, so that's the spot where we would submit information for questions and ideas?
This is more, so you could do that, absolutely. Okay. This is where I get information from here. We have a couple other different ways to connect coming up a little bit later.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All right, I will get back to the presentation. So talking about the higher ed community resources and assets, that was that middle big button, picture button on the web page. There are 2 different document groups that we are going to be organizing resources in the future. And so as I briefly mentioned, the resource that is in the folder right now is what I was able to come up with through some research and is by no means a complete collection of information. But we want to share that this is the idea that we have for how to represent and share this information with you all. So we will be organizing it into 2 different groups, first by school and also by category. And I will explain a little bit more about what that means in just a second. But so by category, we have come up with these categories down here, categories of community resources, that we will hope to organize higher education resources into, as these are kind of the big categories we determined for nonprofits and community to understand in more broad ways. And so the first one is exchange of resources, which is really any exchange of resource, so such as facility rentals or volunteer speaker programs, anything kind of along those lines. The second category is grant philanthropy, any funding opportunities or resources in that. The next is internships, so those programs, research, service days, service learning, and skills-based volunteerism. And so I want to kind of touch on that, that they are similar, but kind of different terms for each side, higher education and nonprofits. And so service learning is a higher education term for connecting classroom opportunities with communities so that students can gain real experience in what they are learning in the classroom. And skills-based volunteerism is when a person takes their unique skills and knowledge and provides that experience to a nonprofit organization in terms of volunteerism to help a very specific skill set need. Then the last 2 are service organizations and volunteer centers. I'm going to explain the categories a little bit more in a second. Does anybody have questions on the categories?
Elizabeth, this is Laura at Lewis University. I just put in the comments, sometimes people call service learning, community engaged learning, or community-based learning, depending on the school. And I know some of the schools that are here today even use different language than service learning, just so folks know.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that it's a not one size fits all term for higher education for sure. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I am going to explain those two category groups now. And so we have by school and by category. And so my visualization that helped me understand it all is by school, we have all of the resources of one tree combined into one resource. By organizing by category, it means all the different resources within that category from different schools combined into one. And so I have a few examples that I'm going to share. So this is the resource that is on the webpage that I just shared a couple minutes ago. But this is our example for now of organizing by category. It may change a little bit based on the material and resources we get from higher education, but this is the general idea. I've included the categories here. So these are all the exchange of resource opportunities. Included some internship programs, some research opportunities, service days that I was able to find, different service organizations within higher education, the skills-based volunteerism, service learning or community engagement, etc. And then volunteer outlets, which is typically where higher education helps provide volunteers to different organizations. And this is organized by category so that if you're looking for a research support, this is maybe you find what you're looking for here, or if you need, or if you're looking to partner with a service day, you can find out what's already happening in the community and higher education. All right, and then I want to share the school specific. So I created a test fake university ABC example for everybody here. This is how we see organizing a university's resources. And so I have created 4 examples of different resources here that are all located on the same page. This is where higher education can highlight what they are proud of in terms of connecting with community. And we can create these to be hyperlinks. This is kind of your document as a school for you to share what you are proud of and the ways that you connect to community. And of course, also including your social media and contact information to get connected with someone at the school if a nonprofit or other community organization is interested in learning more or partnering with your institution. These are drafts. I want to point out, let me actually, if we can get a full picture here. There we go. These are drafts in the works. It's first kind of run of what we see, how to organize these resources. And so I'm sure they will be changing a little bit, but to give you all an idea, this is where we are headed with that. Any questions on the 2 categories of resources? Awesome. I hope that means that I am explaining everything very well. All right, back to the presentation. So get connected. We have 2 different LinkedIn groups right now, one for DuPage County nonprofit groups and one for the DuPage Higher Education Service Council members. The nonprofit group and the council group are both private. One is for nonprofit professionals, the other is for higher education students and professionals. So feel free to join those. They are ways for you to communicate with each other, share ideas, knowledge, ask questions. It is just us sharing this with you so that you can all get connected. And I will be sharing these links to find that group following the meeting. And then another way for this council to connect is through the volunteer portal group. And so there's a group on the Giving DuPage volunteer portal, which is a resource that holds volunteer opportunities, jobs, in-kind donations, and events of DuPage County shared by nonprofit partners And so what we've done is created a group within this portal for the council, higher education members, to easily find and respond to nonprofit needs. And within this portal, it is also an opportunity to track group volunteerism efforts. So it tells you kind of when you record your different service opportunities, it gives us a big picture of what kind of impact we're making as a group. And for nonprofit organizations, you can propose project ideas right in the portal for the council and assign them as public or private needs straight to the group, so that they within this group on the portal see that you are approaching them with this opportunity. A public need would be posted that you share with the council would be posted within the council group, as well as on the general portal for all users to see, and a private need assigned to the council would only be viewed by council members. Are there any questions on this portal group?
So a question had come up earlier from a nonprofit in terms of how they can share their project ideas. For the nonprofits on this meeting, this is where you would start. You definitely want to share whatever project ideas or research ideas, or let's say community garden ideas or internships where you're looking for internships. Somebody asked about that. This is where you would post that as the nonprofit organization. And then we will be sharing these needs with the user group that is higher ed. That user group will be comprised of students as well as others who would be included in the council.
Yes, thank you, Shefali.
I have a question. I'm
Yep.
from a not-for-profit, and we have used service learning students in the past and also interns. And I guess my idea is if you have a project, can you do it in hours, in months, with things not being open yet? I mean, how many hours would a volunteer or a group give to an organization?
That is usually determined within the partnership of higher ed and the nonprofit based on the opportunity. For service learning, based on my knowledge, it's usually a collaboration between the two groups to support whatever need the nonprofit has that also addresses the goals of the course. And for an internship, it's also based on, whoever is proposing that internship, supporting that, as well as sometimes partnering with higher education has its own requirements for their student interns. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth, we're just about 5 minutes behind, and I know you still want to get to roles and responsibilities, and we'll definitely have time for questions at the end. So just
Yep.
5
Great.
10 minutes.
Thank you. So let's get right to roles and responsibilities. I want to point out before we get into it that this is a draft document that we created based on conversation, feedback, and suggestions from previous meetings. And so this is kind of just a starting point of what we have come up with for you all today to give everybody a better idea. And so this is the draft document of roles and responsibilities. It has information for institutions, including their faculty, staff, and students, nonprofit partners, and Campus Compact and Giving DuPage. And so we kind of figured for all participants as a Giving DuPage program, they agreed to engage with Giving DuPage in its role as the county's volunteer center, which is all based around that whole service idea of the council. Participants recognize Campus Compact's role in supporting higher education to fulfill its public purpose, and also recognize VISTA's role as it relates to addressing poverty in the community. And it is also the responsibility of all council participants to report on projects and associated outcomes through the partnership project sharing form that I talked about previously. Again, these are the basic guidelines that we kind of thought up based on previous meetings. So for higher education, as an institutional member, meaning the school, you engage in council service opportunities through the portal group, which we just talked about. You give permission for your school's logo to be presented on the webpage. and also designate faculty, staff representatives, student representatives, and a nonprofit point of contact. And recruit students so that we can get those student leaders, as well as establish your own student responsibilities and expectations. As we understand, a lot of different schools have different ideas on how they want to participate, as well as their own calendars, and things are, very different depending on where you're at. So we're kind of giving some overall guidelines here that we thought of, but are also looking to higher education members to give some feedback on participation as well. For student representatives, we are looking for 2 to 5 students per institution to represent a school, but any student can participate through the portal and be a part of that group and respond to needs. But the specific representatives, we hope, will attend quarterly meetings and provide support and feedback to the council, especially as we are growing and formalizing things, and also act according to your institution's responsibilities and expectations. Faculty, staff representatives, we're looking for 1 to 2 faculty and staff per institution, preferably 1 faculty, 1 staff, but 2 faculty or 2 staff also works, because we understand, it is also your institution's way to represent itself in this council. But we are hoping faculty and staff will attend quarterly meetings and provide support and feedback, again, also to the council, ensure active student participation and accountability within their own institution, and also address school-specific questions of student participants. To clarify a little bit on that third point, it is very much about those questions that Giving DuPage does not have the knowledge or capacity to answer, whether it's about service credit or course credit, that we just don't know. We hope that you all can answer that for your student participants. And the nonprofit point of contact, this is something we had also discovered in previous conversations, is a way for nonprofits to connect with an institution. We are looking for 1 to 2 faculty or staff per institution. If this community engagement position already exists, we want that person. We're not trying to make extra work for anyone. We are just looking for who is the person that a nonprofit interested in connecting with can contact. So the role would be to act as the first point of contact for nonprofit partners seeking collaboration with your institution, and also agree to have contact information shared publicly on the webpage, so that it is easy access information. We're hoping this can kind of centralize things for nonprofits instead of instead of kind of looking all over for information and contact. Nonprofit partners, we've identified 2 right now. Is first, of course, sharing your needs with the council members through the Giving DuPage volunteer portal. That is how they will get to know what you need, and also being actively engaged in council partnership projects. And so partnering with higher education, we want to make sure that everyone is really putting in all the efforts that they can and should be doing in all the projects. Giving DuPage hosts and facilitates the council and all of the meetings. It also guides and supports higher education members and nonprofit partners to ensure council success. Giving DuPage hosts the DuPage Higher Education Service Council LinkedIn group, and also hosts the council group on its volunteer portal. And getting close to the end here, Campus Compact supports in hosting and facilitating the council, as well as supports higher ed members in serving the local community as appropriate. Campus Compact is a membership organization, but we are very grateful to have Natalie Ferlette from Campus Compact here to help kind of support this council's efforts in community. And so I know there are some things that she is happy to help with and support. And last but not least, I am the AmeriCorps member right now. This position, it is a year of service position. It exists for 3 years, at which point my responsibilities, or the future VISTA responsibilities, will be transitioned to council. But while AmeriCorps is here, we serve as the project manager for the council initiative. We facilitate, support, and guide the council towards success, develop tools to support and track council progress and efforts, and also represent Giving DuPage, Campus Compact, and AmeriCorps VISTA. That is the end of the roles and the responsibilities document. Again, I want to emphasize that this is just our first draft proposal of these different roles and responsibilities for participants. Are there any questions on this document? All right. Let me try to balance everything on my screen here. So next meeting is higher education only. We're hoping to really take some of the materials from today's meeting and move forward to formalizing some projects and foundation within the council. So it will be higher ed only. Mark your calendars now for Tuesday, April 6th at 3 p.m. Lost my train of thought. Mark your calendar. We'll be sending out a registration link, probably very similar to this meeting in the future, but we just want to make you all aware so we can make sure you can all join us. Okay, so there's a lot of next steps here, but don't worry, I will outline everything as best as I can for you, and I will also be sending out reminders for a couple of these things in the few follow-up weeks. So email me with your designated leadership roles by March 10th. You know, I've reached out to a few people already about the nonprofit point of contact, and we are making progress on that. So thank you all who have responded on that. Then share your council partnership projects, whether it's already on the webpage and shared, or I don't know about it. Please, feel free to fill this out and let us know. You may have information that you want us to share about your project that we don't know about. Also recruit student leaders for the April 6th meeting. We want student leaders to really start getting involved. Please use those resources. If there's any other resources that we can help with, let me know. We really want students to start joining this, helping us form this group and start leading us in some change in the community. Share your school resources. So there's a form coming soon. We talked about the 2 different resource groups, higher education. We want to hear from you. There's no way for us to know everything that you do without sometimes you just telling us. So we're trying to create a form that will help auto-populate some information for us about your different resources. So be on the lookout for that. Take 30 seconds and join our council LinkedIn group, and also sign up for the volunteer portal by March 10th. We're really looking to start making some of those connections on there. Nonprofits, join the LinkedIn group and start posting those service projects on the portal by March 24th so we can start solidifying things and making some action happen. Don't forget to save the date. All right. Does anybody have questions now that I have unloaded a lot of information?
So I think we've seen a lot of comments saying, hey, great progress since the first meeting. And that's great to hear because Elizabeth has been a busy bee and hard at work. And so hopefully you have seen a big difference between the first meeting you attended either as a higher ed institution or a nonprofit organization and this meeting. But this is the time to ask a lot of questions because we really want to start hitting the ground running now. On the higher ed side, we really want to get students recruited. We heard your feedback at the last meeting or at the first meeting we had with you in terms of having student recruitment materials, having a web page and a way to explain this council and why students might want to get involved. So we're looking to higher ed to start recruiting students. And on the nonprofit side, we really want you to start identifying what are your needs, especially for those organizations serving low-income households. What are the needs that you have? What are the projects? Or if you could paint a magical picture where students could help your organization and you could tap into the resources and skills and assets of higher ed, what would that project be for your organization? And post that need at the portal, or if it's a bigger project and you're not sure, should I post it at the portal? Well, then reach out to Elizabeth and we can take it from there. But we want to make sure that folks feel very prepared and ready for next steps. And if you have questions, definitely ask them now. And don't feel like you have to just ask us. Like if you have a question of higher ed in general, you can ask that and vice versa, right? And Elizabeth, I think, go ahead and take us off the float so people can see the gallery view now. And we can get back to that. Yeah, that's it. Thanks. So we're going to pause there, and folks can feel free to chime in with questions or comments. I saw some folks saying, hey, we're excited to post project ideas at the portal. Questions for Natalie. She's our campus compact expert. So this is the time. Evelyn, I know you said you had an idea. Do you feel like you want to share it here, just as putting an idea out there as a project?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Shafali. This is Evelyn with Hope Fair Housing Center, where we fight discrimination and segregation in housing. Right now, we are a statewide coalition that's working on legislation to end source of income discrimination. And so I think I'm going to put that in your portal, because we are looking for organizations that want to stand behind this campaign. We're looking for endorsing organizations. So I'm going to put more information up there. Right now, it's perfectly legal for landlords to discriminate against individuals that have a Section 8 voucher, for instance, or get alimony or get other sources of income. They need places to live. So that's what I got. Thank you for the opportunity.
Here's the nice thing about this conversation. Even if, like, I know higher ed institutions are probably starting to think like, oh, what can we do to maybe support that? But also the other nonprofits on this call would probably, like, I'm thinking maybe you and Dave Roth have a lot to talk about. Other folks, feel free to unmute or type into the chat your questions.
Hey there, I'm Adrian Ermer, representing Illinois Tech, and we've got our Rice campus out in your neck of the woods. We're not a heavy student body campus over there, so we don't have a whole lot of bodies, but you know, on the educational side or the reskilling side, if there are folks that you identify from families or backgrounds of need, we do have pretty robust scholarship opportunities for students that are coming from Illinois. So, you know, think on it that way too, and feel free to leverage that. They would have to travel to main campus, but you know, it's an excellent educational opportunity for qualifying students. Yeah.
Shafali, you just muted yourself.
Typical. I just need more coffee, people. That's what the problem is. So Adrian or Adrian, I don't know how, I don't want to mispronounce your name, but my thought is, like, that's a great example of an asset or a resource that you offer, right? That scholarship. So definitely including that in your, you know, that, again, Elizabeth said it's coming soon. That's a form that each higher ed institution can fill out in terms of what are the assets and resources you offer for community, right? And so that particular thing, and I suspect other institutions may also have scholarships, and that is the exact thing the nonprofits need to know for the low-income households that are serving who have college-age students. So that's the kind of sharing we want. So we want to make sure that your IIT Rice Campus profile, your asset profile, includes that scholarship for sure. Great
it's not
information.
just college aged. College could be for any age.
Well, true. Good point. Good point. Good point.
We do have a few, you know, later in life students on campus who are just switching, you know.
I am going to steal that. Later in life. What a nice way to say that. Yeah. We're a lot of us on this call are later in life, and that feels nice, gentle way to say that. Other questions, folks? No questions.
I'd like to say,
go ahead. Sorry. Hey,
I just like to say, I just jumped on this call. I'm glad I did. I've learned a lot, and I'm thinking, I know I need an intern or someone to help with Access database. So this is just prompted. Now I know where to go. I had no idea where to go for this. So thank you, Shafali and Elizabeth and everybody else for sharing.
Awesome, Anne-Marie, thank you. Hey, Elizabeth, while folks are still coming up with their questions, will you do me a favor? We didn't share the actual projects sharing form. If you have that link available, that job form available, maybe we can show it on the screen so that the nonprofits and the higher ed can start seeing what that So the sharing form is intended after the nonprofit and the higher ed, or maybe several nonprofits and several higher ed are kind of working together on something. And so we have kind of a project sharing form, and hopefully Elizabeth can kind of pull that up. We didn't show it because we just felt like we were showing you so many things all at once. But you will definitely get it in the post-meeting follow-up. While others are coming up with their own questions. There were a lot of people who were on the call who also, this was their first time joining us. They weren't involved in the November and December meetings, like Anne Marie. How did this go for you is a lot of information. So we're just looking for feedback as well. How can we continue to improve? Who can share feedback on the draft forms? Everything is in draft form. So we're building this from the ground up. So please continue to share your feedback with Elizabeth. She is synthesizing all of it. Natalie, any thoughts you have? Well, Elizabeth, go ahead and share it on the screen.
Well, I was just going to reinforce that, yeah, all of this is draft, right? And so I think, you know, the example that Adrian brought up about sort of the scholarship piece, I don't know that we even talked that much when we were thinking about this of like, oh, that's also something that could really be useful. And so the idea behind this council is not that we're going to solve all the problems of community, but exactly what Anne Marie just said, like, we're really excited about the idea that we're opening up the possibility for nonprofits and higher education to work together and find ways to support each other. So, you know, everything is a draft right now. We're really hoping for input from everyone else so that we can really make it as useful and as productive as possible. So again, thanks to everyone for being here and for you know, all the great ideas that were put into the chat, and we're capturing all of this and excited to move forward.
I wanted to just suggest something that we've been seeing at Lewis. Because we can't physically be together right now, it's challenging to have the opportunities for networking and connecting. And I saw a few people had asked, you know, maybe could meetings be about an hour in the future? And I wondered if they could be, you know, maybe they are an hour, but there could still be leftover time at the end for anyone who wanted to pop into a Zoom room to connect more deeply about things that came up. To do that, you know, for the last 15 minutes or something like that. But that sort of meeting after the meeting that can't really happen in a virtual space is really nice.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I know, I think you've done that yourself, Laura, in some of your things, and I've always liked having that opportunity. Thanks for sharing. So this is the partnership project sharing form. Just to kind of go over it, it is so that you can all share different projects with us and help us understand what kind of great work you are doing in the community. The contact information is intended for us to know who to contact if we have more questions. And so it will not be shared with anyone. But we do ask if you're the project leader, specifically because if you're not, we want to know who is so that we can ask the right questions to the right people. And so project information, we want you to give your project a title. We want to know who initiated this project to help us kind of understand how things are happening in the council. That gives us a little bit of background data to understand how we can progress. We also want to know the status of your project. Is it brand new? Is it in the works? Is it something that's ongoing and you've, you know, established a community garden and it's continuously happening? Or is it a project that similar to the MLK Day collaboration, you know, it happened and it is now kind of closed off. We want to know if it's student-led. That is really our ambition here with this council, is to bring out the student leaders. So we do want to know if they are leading the project. A brief description about your project so that we can help share that information widely, as well as understand who the participants are in higher education, nonprofits. I wish I could list all of you and do check boxes, but that would make this form twice as long since there are so many wonderful organizations in DuPage. As well as any other partners in your projects. You may be connecting with the business or community group as sponsors, or even hosting various events, just kind of sharing that information. And then there are also outcomes and goals. It actually changes based on a couple different questions, because we know sometimes you may not have established any. But what are the outcomes goals for this project is the question for new projects. We want to know what kind of outcomes and goals you're thinking about so that we can understand where you're headed. And then if you select that it's established and ongoing or completed, we will also ask about what kind of things that are happening right now, or what kind of outcomes you have had based on the project that is completed. And also sharing any photos and resources of your project. It's really nice to have that visual documentation. Like I shared on the webpage, we have a flyer from the MLK Service Day with COD and NLU. And it's just a really nice little added thing that everybody can see kind of visually some of what happened in the service opportunity.
So I'm going to ask a question that Mindy asked, and we're going to clarify it for her. So she was asking, and this is from the nonprofit. What's the starting point? Do they start by posting when do they fill out this form? And so here's the process, and feel free to kind of take us back to the gallery view, Elizabeth. So the process for a nonprofit organization. So I'm going to choose Anne Marie because she just said she had some ideas and some thoughts. So the first step for the nonprofit is to post your project or your volunteer need, your service need, your donation need, your research project need, whatever it looks like. The process for the nonprofit is to post it first at your Giving DuPage volunteer portal account. What happens when you add that need there, Elizabeth is one and I who see these daily volunteer needs pop up in the portal. And the moment and Elizabeth, maybe we might want to just figure out is there a designation? Should we give when they're posting their need, should they say DuPage Higher Ed Service Council or something in the body of it? So that's a trigger for us, but that is the first step for the nonprofit. What we will do with your need then, you will either say, hey, it's going to be public or private just for the council. And so if you say public, then it will be posted at the council user group, but also to all volunteers who visit the website. So for example, Anne Marie, if you have an internship and you want to post that need, if you say public, it'll go, everybody who visits the portal in general will see that internship, but also so will the Higher Ed Council, okay? And then if you say private, we will pull your need into just the user group for the council. Who's going to be in that council user group? We are going to encourage the students to sign up in that council user group, as well as any faculty or staff that need to be in the information flow so they can share these needs and understand what are the needs that the nonprofits have. So as long as you sign up in that user group, you will see those needs that the nonprofits are sharing. So then I'm going to just pick up the ball and say, let's say Joan at COD says, oh my God, we can totally help Anne Marie at Love Christian Clearinghouse on this project. We totally can do this. So then we'll have that connection made, and then you guys will probably work together more, whether it's an internship or a research project or something. And then when it gets to that shared stage that both the nonprofit and the higher eds are working together, then you can share that project on that project sharing form. So the project sharing form is really after that sort of connection has been made between the nonprofit and the higher ed, and that you guys are definitely communicating with each other and you're fostering ideas and whatever good things come out of it. And that's where you would share that project sharing form, either in the beginning, while it's still in the works, after you kind of did it. But we want to make sure that we include the fact that, hey, you guys met and made something good happen through the efforts of this council. And then Joan quickly replied from COD, we totally can help Anne Marie. So I don't know what that means, but Anne Marie posts the need and we'll make sure Joan sees it. Elizabeth, I am realizing we should figure out and you might have already solved this. So Elizabeth solves things before I even think of them, but how can we make sure when the nonprofit adds the need at the portal that it is designated so that it goes, that we know this? So you might have the answer.
Yeah, there is a way for when you are either editing or posting a need in the portal. If you scroll all the way down, it says user group, and you can actually select yourself to assign it to the DuPage Higher Education Service Council user group. Otherwise, yeah, you can also just as easily type a little note in the description and say, to assign it there, and we can do the same thing.
Okay, so when they're actually creating the need, like a brand new need, there's a field that allows them to actually do that, correct? And so we
Yes.
can create a little quick, like 30-second video that shows them that. Okay,
Yep.
so we'll do that for you so that you guys don't have to panic and go, I won't know how to figure that out. 'Cause that'll be something that I would do. So I know Natalie's monitoring the chat. Any other thoughts or questions? We're at 11:22. We're happy to give you back 8 minutes of your time, or we can stick around and keep answering questions. So you guys tell us what is your interest?
I would like to clarify one more thing that I didn't mention during the presentation was for the higher education members joining the volunteer group on the portal. It will lead you to 2 questions. When you click the link, respond to those questions and then submit. It'll then prompt you to either sign in or create an account. And if you already have an account, feel free to sign in. If you don't have one, once you create an account, it will automatically make you a member of the user group from there. And I can create a video or something as well to kind of guide people through that.
I think we have a couple of students on this call, so on this meeting, so I just would love to hear from any students who are involved and get their feedback. And then there's also a question for Mary Parsons. So Mary, I'm going to hold, just let me see if any students can share their quick thoughts or feedbacks if we have any, and then I'll answer Mary's question.
I think they may have all had to jump off already.
Okay, yeah, there were some that had to jump off for class and stuff. So Mary asks, when the nonprofit adds their need to the portal, is this something that only the higher ed would see, or is it a project that other nonprofits could collaborate on? So that's a good question. I think the nice thing is because Elizabeth and I are filtering these needs and we see them as they come in, we have the opportunity. It won't necessarily go out to the entire nonprofit community unless you make the need public where everyone can see it. Doesn't matter if it's nonprofit or everyone, but we can also see, like, if somebody has an idea that we think, hey, that's a great collaboration type of project with other nonprofits involved, we can also loop others in. So it's not like, you know, like, again, the whole point of this is to really foster that collaboration between higher ed and nonprofits, but also amongst higher ed with each other and amongst nonprofits with each other, right? And if it ends up becoming something big, that is the entire goal eventually. The big picture that Elizabeth talked about was, how do we work on some big need for all of low-income households? How can we get many nonprofits and many higher ed institutions working together to solve some of those problems? So, and we'll kind of then tap partners like the Federation to really help us also facilitate if it ends up becoming something that big. And that's the big picture and where this council is really headed. Questions, thoughts, feedback? We got a lot of positive comments. We appreciate that.
I'd also like to add that if you are looking to add nonprofit partners and you do post a need in the portal, feel free to write that you're looking to collaborate, because that will help us know that you are looking to expand that with other partnerships. Right. If there are no more questions, we will give you back 5 minutes. Thank you all again so much for joining us. Feel free, if you have any other feedback or you come up with a question later, to email me. I will be following up with everyone and sending some information, including the notes, the recording and the slides. So yeah.
And higher ed, please start recruiting students for this council. We can't wait to get these student leaders, these student service leaders involved. So please let us know how we can help in your recruitment efforts.
Yeah, and those student and faculty staff representatives that we're looking for we really hope will help lead this council and give a lot of strong feedback to really formalize things and help us move forward. So get those people involved and active, and we'll make some real progress really soon. All right.
Thanks
Thank you
everyone
all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Be safe,
Bye.
be warm. All right, Natalie and Elizabeth, I'm gonna bounce out to that other meeting.